Arizona, a land of blistering heat, endless highways, and red canyons that keep their secrets. Here, legends don't fade. They whisper through the desert wind. Disappearances, murders, mysteries. They don't just linger here. They keep happening. Today, we dive into 3 of Arizona's strangest cases: a treasure hunter who vanished, a wave of highway shootings, and a child who disappeared in seconds. The Superstition Mountains, jagged and sun-scorched, just east of Apache Junction, Arizona, have long been wrapped in legend. Their cliffs rise like broken teeth, their canyons fading quickly into shadow. To many, they are beautiful. To others, cursed. For centuries, whispers of the lost Dutchman's gold mine have lured fortune seekers into those canyons, only for many to vanish without explanation, their stories swallowed by the unforgiving desert. In December 2009, 35-year-old Jesse Capon became one of them. Jesse wasn't a drifter or reckless wanderer. He was a Denver hotel bellhop, quiet and responsible. But behind his everyday life was an obsession with the lost Dutchman's gold. He collected maps, journals, and books, over 100 by some counts, and convinced the mine's location was a puzzle he was destined to solve. In late November 2009, he packed his Jeep, stored supplies at a motel near Apache Junction, and set out into the wilderness for what he intended to be a month-long search. But that month, and then years, would pass without word. By December, his Jeep and tent were found near the Tortilla Mountain trailhead, along with many of his personal items. His wallet, credit cards, clothing, even food and water remained behind. His campsite bore signs it had been abandoned suddenly, perhaps during a storm or in a hurry. Search teams scoured the region, but in the rugged terrain, steep cliffs, and labyrinthine washes of the Superstitions, nothing turned up. For nearly 3 years, Jesse's name lingered among the missing. His mother and father held on to hope, but many feared the worst, that he'd fallen, been lost to the elements, or met foul play. Some speculated conflict among competing treasure hunters, noting how secretive and cutthroat that community could be in the mountains. Others invoked the curse whispered over century-old lore, saying the Superstitions always take their due. Then, in November 2012, volunteer searchers made a chilling discovery about a half-mile from his campsite. They located a day pack containing GPS gear, a camera, and Jesse's driver's license in a remote slope near Tortilla Mountain. Above that, a boot and skeletal remains were wedged deep in a narrow rock crevice in a cliff face where the terrain made access almost impossible. DNA testing later confirmed the remains to be Jesse's. How did he end up there? The most widely accepted hypothesis is a tragic accident. He may have slipped while navigating a precarious ledge or descending at night, lost control of footing, and fallen into a narrow crevice from which he could not extricate himself. In that isolated position, his remains were hidden from view and undetectable even to helicopters or passing searchers. Indeed, related searches often note that missing persons are discovered within a half-mile of their last known point, but only when searchers scrutinize steep walls and hidden gullies. Yet, the circumstances leave room for speculation. Had someone been with him? Could a fall have been misinterpreted or assistance withheld? Some treasure hunters believe rivalry or intent might have played a role, though no evidence has surfaced to prove that. Others invoke the mountain's mythic aura, the notion that the superstitions themselves exact a price on those who dare to chase the Dutchman's gold. In the end, Jesse's story is both tragic and haunting. His body was recovered, the identification made, but the finer details will likely never be known. He entered the superstitions chasing gold, but what he found instead was something far more final, leaving his mystery to linger among the shadows of the mountains. But Arizona's mysteries don't all stay in the mountains. Some strike in the open, on roads we drive every day. And before we continue, if stories like these keep you hooked, make sure to subscribe, because these are the mysteries that refuse to end. Phoenix, Arizona, a city of endless sunlight, desert horizons, and highways that carve through sprawling neighborhoods like veins of concrete. For most, these freeways are simply part of daily life, a routine drive to work, school, or home. But in the mid-2000s, those very roads transformed into hunting grounds. Between 2005 and 2006, fear seeped into the city. Residents lived with the knowledge that anyone, at any time, could become a target. At first, the incidents seemed random, isolated. A driver's window shattered, a pedestrian collapsed without warning. But soon, police recognized a chilling pattern. Phoenix was being stalked by not one but two separate serial offenders. The first became infamous as the baseline killer, a violent predator responsible for sexual assaults and murders that left the city shaken. He was eventually caught and brought to justice. But the second offender, the one who came to be known simply as the serial shooter, remains an open wound in Arizona's criminal history. The serial shooter targeted the unsuspecting. He struck people standing outside their homes, pedestrians walking their dogs, and drivers caught in routine commutes. At least 8 people were killed and dozens more injured. Randomness was its own weapon. No motive, no pattern in victims, only the certainty that it could happen again at any moment. For more than a year, Phoenix residents adjusted to a new reality. The sound of a car backfiring or the pop of fireworks was enough to send hearts racing. Eventually, the wave subsided. Arrests were made, and for a time, the city exhaled. But peace was temporary, because nearly a decade later, the fear returned. In the summer of 2015, the freeways became the stage once more. This time, it was the I-10, one of the city's busiest arteries. In a span of weeks, 11 separate shootings struck vehicles. Bullets shattered windshields and blew out tires as drivers sped down the interstate. Families driving children to school, commuters heading to work, truckers hauling freight. No one was safe. Some victims barely escaped with their lives. Others pulled over in shock, glass scattering across their laps, hearts pounding from the sudden violence. For Phoenix, it was déjà vu. The shootings had returned, and with them the dread that anyone could be next. The investigation was intense. Law enforcement agencies coordinated across jurisdictions, tracking tips, scouring surveillance footage, and even offering large rewards. Arrests were made, but most of the shootings were never definitively solved. Conflicting reports and lack of hard evidence clouded the cases. Some suspects were cleared. Others lingered in rumor. To this day, no single person has been confirmed as the I-10 shooter. The questions remain as sharp as they were a decade ago. Were the shootings of 2005 to 2006 connected to the spree in 2015? Was Phoenix unlucky enough to harbor 2 or even 3 separate serial gunmen across the span of just 10 years? And perhaps most unsettling of all, how could such violence occur repeatedly in the modern era in broad daylight with so few answers left behind? Theories swirl. Some criminologists argue that Phoenix's sprawling road system, with its long stretches of unbroken highway and easy escape routes, made it an ideal landscape for shooters. Others believe multiple offenders were at work. Different men, each driven by personal demons, whether thrill-seeking, rage, or untreated mental illness. There are those who whisper about more shadowy possibilities. A coordinated effort, perhaps more than one shooter acting in tandem, their motives hidden behind layers of silence. And for locals who lean toward the superstitious, the explanation lies not in men, but in the land itself. They say the highways are cursed, places where violence loops in cycles, destined to return no matter how much time passes. What is certain is that the shootings left their mark. The bullets may have stopped, but the fear remains. Phoenix drivers still glance into their mirrors when the freeway grows too quiet, still tense at the echo of a sharp crack on asphalt. Some families avoid driving that stretch altogether at night, their routines permanently altered by something that may never be explained. The serial shooter was never truly caught. The I-10 gunman was never truly unmasked. Both remain phantoms on the freeways of Arizona, shadows that stretch across decades, leaving only shattered glass, unanswered questions, and the uneasy knowledge that the quiet hum of tires on pavement can in an instant be pierced by gunfire. Phoenix has moved forward, but it has not forgotten, because in this desert city, the highways still carry more than traffic. They carry memory, and every driver knows what happened once could happen again. But some mysteries don't come from treasure or highways. Some happen in the quietest places of all. A neighborhood street, an ice cream truck, and a child's bike left spinning. Mesa, Arizona, a suburban neighborhood, quiet, familiar, and considered safe. Families let their children ride bikes through the streets. Neighbors knew one another by name. On January 2nd, 1999, that sense of security shattered forever. 11-year-old Mikkel Biggs, an energetic, artistic girl who loved drawing and dreamed of becoming an animator, was waiting outside her home with her younger sister. They were listening for the cheerful jingle of the approaching ice cream truck, a small promise of joy on an ordinary evening. Her sister grew impatient and ran inside for less than 2 minutes. When she returned, Mikkel was gone. Her bicycle lay abandoned in the street, its front wheel still spinning as if she had only just stepped away. That eerie detail, the wheel turning with no rider, would become the haunting image burned into the community's memory. Within minutes, neighbors joined the search. Police combed the area with flashlights, dogs, and helicopters, but there were no sounds of a struggle, no signs of a chase, no footprints or tire marks suggesting a getaway vehicle. Nothing. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed her whole. The case drew national attention. Volunteers covered the area with posters, and a $60,000 reward was offered. Tips poured in, but none led anywhere. For a time, every white van or unfamiliar car became suspicious. Parents clutched their children tighter, yet no witnesses came forward. No one had seen Mikkel leave. No stranger was noticed in those critical seconds. The silence was deafening, and the lack of evidence only deepened the mystery. Theories spread. Some believed Mikkel was taken by someone who had been carefully watching, waiting for the exact moment her sister went inside. Others thought it was a random predator. Investigators even considered a serial offender, but none of the scenarios provided answers. Nearly 2 decades later, in 2018, a bizarre development reignited interest. A dollar bill turned up in Wisconsin, over 1,700 miles from Mesa. Scrawled across it were the words, "I'm Mikhail Biggs. I'm in Mesa, Arizona." Authorities tested it, but no fingerprints or DNA were found. Experts concluded it was likely a cruel hoax, though some wonder if it was a genuine cry for help. Either way, it left Mikhail's family devastated and the community unsettled all over again. The bill raised disturbing questions. Who wrote it? Why Mesa, if it surfaced so far away? Was it connected to Mikhail, or just a stranger exploiting her tragedy? For Mikhaila's family, the unanswered questions became their daily reality. Every holiday and birthday passed with painful absence. Her mother once described it as living with a wound that never heals. The grief was compounded by the lack of closure. No body, no evidence, just endless uncertainty. The strangeness of the case fueled speculation and folklore. Some locals whisper that Mikhail's spinning bike wheel symbolized a clock stuck in time, as if the moment of her disappearance was cut out of reality itself. In paranormal circles, her case is sometimes cited as a time slip, though most investigators remain grounded in abduction. 2 decades later, Mikhail has never been found. She would be in her 30s today, perhaps with a family of her own. Instead, her image remains frozen at age 11. Forever the girl with a bike waiting for the ice cream truck. Mesa has changed since 1999. New families have moved in, but for those who remember, the street where Mikhail disappeared carries a shadow. Her loved ones continue to fight for awareness, keeping her name alive, hoping one day the truth will surface. Mikhail's disappearance remains one of Arizona's most haunting cold cases. A child lost in the blink of an eye, a community left with unending questions, and the terrifying reality that even in the most ordinary places, people can vanish without a trace. 3 mysteries, 3 stories, 3 shadows stretching across Arizona. Jesse Capin, the treasure hunter who never made it out of the mountains. The I-10 corridor shootings, a pattern of violence that keeps repeating. Mikhail Biggs, a child gone in an instant, her bike left behind. No answers, no closure, just echoes in the desert. Which mystery stayed with you the most? What do you think really happened? Tell us in the comments. And if you're ready for the next descent into the unknown, subscribe, because Arizona's mysteries don't fade away, they keep happening.